They laughed the minute I showed up at Fort Liberty's gate with a duffel bag, a fraying photo, and my father's old patch sewn on crooked. Name's June Whitaker, 63, retired librarian. Smelled like scorched coffee and pride that morning. Ever tried walking into history uninvited? The soldering iron clicked off with a final hiss, leaving the smell of warm metal and dust in the air. June Whitaker pulled back her glasses and exhaled, studying the 1970s Zenith radio she had just revived. The static had given way to the low hum of a local AM station, weather-patriotic jingles, and an announcement about a pancake breakfast at the VFW hall. Outside, golden leaves fluttered past the front window of Whitaker radios, catching in the chipped lettering on the glass. It was Veterans Day weekend, and Fayetteville wore its red, white, and blue like Sunday best. June sipped black coffee from a chipped porcelain mug, its rim just slightly rough where the glaze had worn away. Her father's mug. She reached for a faded photograph that leaned against a cracked oscillograph. A young man in combat fatigues smiled at the camera, the sun catching his cheek. His name was never written on the back. He didn't need one. She wiped the glass with her sleeve. "Mornin', Dad." The front door creaked open, bell jangling above. Mr. Luther shuffled in, shoulders hunched against the cold, a broken cassette player under his arm. "You still open on holidays, girl?" he asked without looking up. June smiled faintly. "Ghosts don't take the day off." He grunted, setting the deck on the counter. "You still planning to head over to the base tomorrow?" She nodded once. "Same as every year. You know there's no name waiting for you on that wall." June said nothing, just returned to cleaning the player. Mr. Luther scratched his beard. "Simon Whitaker disappeared for a reason. Not every soldier gets carved in stone. Sometimes that's mercy." "I'm not carving anything," June replied, voice steady. "Just leaving a flower." The old man glanced at her jacket on the wall, faded olive drab sleeves, long and frayed. The Ghost Recon patch was barely visible. He shook his head. "Well, don't go chasing ghosts hoping they'll talk back." He turned to leave. "Some names are better left unsaid." The door closed behind him with a soft rattle. June stood alone in the quiet, the radio whispering in the background. She reached for the jacket and slipped it on. The weight of it was heavier than cloth. It carried silence memory and something unresolved. She pulled a single white daisy from the small vase on the workbench, wrapped it gently in paper towel, and tucked it into her coat pocket. Then she turned off the shop lights, locked the door, and stepped into the morning. The breeze stirred the hem of her jacket. As she zipped it up, her hand brushed the worn patch, ghost gray, now unreadable to most. But not to her. "Then I'll just leave a flower," she whispered, "where the name should have been." The clouds above Fort Liberty had begun to soften, brightening, from dull gray to a gentle silver. Midday warmth nudged through the chill, and the air filled with the scent of percolating coffee and grass crushed under folding chairs. Just beyond the base perimeter in the open-air community park, a pop-up of patriotism had bloomed. American Legion tents flapping a coffee truck, piping Sinatra through old speakers and rows of lawn chairs, where veterans sat wrapped in layers of faded camo and shared laughter. June stood on the edge of it all alone. Her father's jacket still wrapped her shoulders. The Ghost Recon patch, ghost gray and stitched by time, remained untouched and unnoticed. Paul Hadley returned from a nearby table carrying 2 paper cups. "Careful, it's military-grade hot," he said, settling into the chair beside her with a groan. "Never thought I'd miss MRE coffee." June smiled faintly. Behind them, a student jazz band attempted a Sousa medley from beneath a white canopy, the trumpet slightly off-key. A little boy in a flag-themed hoodie darted past, dragging a plastic sword. His mother followed with camera in hand and an apologetic wave. June's gaze drifted to the patch on her arm. Paul caught it. "You keep looking like that, people might start seeing it too," she looked at him. He gestured toward the jacket. "That patch says more than you think." "Not if no one remembers," June replied. Paul sipped. A man like Simon Whitaker didn't just vanish. They buried his name, but not the lives he touched. "People forget," she said softly. "They forget paperwork," Paul said. "Not the man who dragged them out of mortar fire or rewired a satellite dish with a gum wrapper and a glare." He waved toward a trio of veterans under an oak tree. "Come on, let's test your theory." June hesitated, then stood. The veterans looked up as they approached. One of them, broad-shouldered and wrapped in a Marine's blanket, grinned. "Hadley. Dragged someone out of line again." "Something like that," Paul said. "Fellas, meet June. Her father was Ghost Recon." Conversation stopped. One leaned forward. "You said Whitaker?" "Yes." Another nodded slowly. "Kosovo 01. He rerouted a convoy through a mountain pass. Saved 2 squads. Paul smiled. "See, told you." They talked. June listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes silent. Eventually, one of the men raised his phone. "Mind if I get a shot of that patch?" June hesitated. Paul leaned over. "Just the patch. No names." She nodded. Click. A young woman in a UNC sweatshirt wandered over, arms full of brochures. "Are y'all the Ghost Recon folks someone just posted about?" She showed her phone. A photo of June's jacket patch front and center. Caption, "Fort Liberty today." "Anyone recognize this? That's my post," the student said sheepishly. "I help with the campus vet forum. It's kind of blowing up." She scrolled. "I served with a Whitaker in Mosul. That patch ain't for show. That's earned. Ghost Recon never posed, but we followed them." Paul chuckled. Internet moves fast. Then one more comment came in. General Harriman served under a Ghost Recon captain named Simon Whitaker. The group fell quiet. June blinked. "Harriman," Paul said. "That man's not just brass, he's steel." The UNC student's phone pinged again. He's replying. More flowed in. "That jacket brings back memories. That man taught me how to clear a room in silence. Someone tell her she should be inside the base, not on the bench." One veteran stood up, brushing crumbs from his jeans. "You shouldn't be out here." June looked up. "You should be in there with the ones who remember." The student checked her phone. "Ma'am, General Harriman just posted." All eyes turned. She read aloud, "Simon Whitaker saved my life in Fallujah. If that's his daughter, she deserves to be welcomed. Someone open that gate." Paul clapped June's shoulder. "Well, I'd call that official recognition." June stood slowly, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt remembered. "Ready?" Paul asked. She nodded, and they walked toward the gate, toward memory, toward something whole. At precisely 10 Saru a.m., the brass band paused mid-march, its last note echoing across Fort Liberty's central plaza. The Veterans Day ceremony had unfolded with polished precision, color guards, a gospel choir, the mayor's brief remarks. Cameras flashed. Schoolchildren waved flags with sticky fingers and wide eyes. Retired officers sat in neatly arranged rows beneath banners that fluttered like memories in the autumn wind. And then came June. She moved across the plaza, flanked by Paul Hadley and 3 other veterans, each of them walking with quiet purpose. June wore the same olive drab jacket, the Ghost Recon patch slightly more visible in the sunlight. At first, few noticed. She was just another face in the crowd. But Lieutenant Bell did. He stood near the seating area, posture, stiff expression, unreadable. He stepped back instinctively as the group passed, offering a subtle nod. June acknowledged him with a glance, nothing more. But something in his eyes had changed. Uncertainty, perhaps. Or respect. They moved to the outer ring of the ceremony. No fanfare. Just proximity. At the podium, a tall man in dress uniform prepared to step forward. General Harriman. Age had sharpened rather than softened him, steel gray hair, posture still ramrod straight. His chest bore rows of ribbons, but his eyes were elsewhere. As he turned toward the microphone, his gaze caught someone. His voice faltered mid-step. His jaw tightened. And then slowly, deliberately, he stepped off the podium and began walking. The crowd murmured, cameras tilted. The student band went quiet. June didn't move. Harriman's eyes were fixed on the patch, sun-faded ghost gray, stitched onto the jacket of a woman standing still while the world tilted. He stopped 2 feet away. "Simon Whitaker's daughter?" he asked softly. June nodded once. Harriman removed his cap. His silver hair caught the wind, and then he saluted. Crisp, formal. No words. The moment shattered the plaza's rhythm. Noise dropped out of the air like breath held too long. Paul Hadley stood straighter beside her. One of the veterans with him followed suit, lifting a trembling hand to his brow. Then another. Then another. Then Lieutenant Bell. Within seconds, the ripple became a tide rose of veterans, officers, and enlisted personnel rising in silence. Civilians followed, uncertain at first, then steadier. Even the children froze, watching as the square became still and solemn. Flashbulbs flickered, but no one spoke. June held her father's flower in one hand. Her other brushed against the patch. For once, no one asked to see her credentials. Harriman lowered his hand slowly. He leaned in. "He never got the honor he deserved," he said, voice just above a whisper. He turned to his aide nearby. "Let's fix that before sundown." The aide nodded sharply and stepped away, phone already in hand. The general looked back at June. "You kept him alive." June's voice trembled. "He never left." Harriman nodded. "Good." And just like that, he turned, stepped back onto the platform, and faced a plaza changed not by speeches, but by silence. No one heard the next order of the program. No one needed to. The moment had spoken, and the name that had never been carved in stone was now etched in the hearts of those who remembered. The sidewalk outside Fort Liberty's West Gate teemed with color and sound. Veterans Day in full celebration. Flags lined the fences, and paper banners flapped against metal barricades. Families unloaded from minivans, children in denim jackets, and 2 large ball caps ran between booths where volunteers handed out stickers and flag pins. A brass band rehearsed off-key behind a recruitment tent. The air smelled of coffee, fried dough, and wet leaves. But for June Whitaker, everything moved like background noise. She approached the pedestrian entrance with a single white daisy in hand, and her father's faded field jacket zipped against the cold. The old Ghost Recon patch on the sleeve was nearly invisible, its stitching rubbed smooth by time and memory. A young officer, late 20s, clean-shaven with sharp creases in his uniform, stepped in her path. His name tag read Lieutenant Bell. "Good morning, ma'am," he said flatly. "May I see your base ID or event credentials?" "I don't have either, June." replied her voice calm. The base administration building smelled faintly of old paper and lemon wax. Afternoon light filtered through tall windows, casting long stripes across the flag behind the front desk. It was quieter here, no band, no speeches, no crowd. Just memory. June sat across from General Harriman in a quiet office lined with filing cabinets and framed commendations. Between them lay an open folder, weathered reports, declassified missions, and a photograph she hadn't seen since childhood. Her father. Standing in a clearing helmet tucked under one arm, hand raised in a casual half-wave. The same Ghost Recon patch was on his shoulder, the same calm in his eyes. Harriman slid the folder toward her. They buried more than one mission that year, he said. June ran a finger along the photo's edge. And the man, they buried him too, on paper. He pulled out a crisp new form and signed it with a pen that clicked sharply in the quiet. But not today. We're adding him to the record, as fallen, with honors. A knock at the door. The records officer entered mid-50s wire-rimmed glasses, holding a sealed manila envelope. Found something, he said. Locked drawer in auxiliary storage. He opened the envelope and revealed a tarnished commendation. The official seal was still intact. Commendation for valor. Never delivered. June touched the edge. Why not? 'Cause no one wanted to explain what he did to earn it. Later that afternoon, they walked together to the memorial wall preparation site, a quiet corner near the plaza. Granite panels stood against scaffolds. One space was empty, waiting. June reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the white daisy. Been saving this? Harriman nodded. Nameplates coming. Custom brass. Overnight rush. Footsteps approached from behind. Mr. Luther appeared, rumpled coat, holding a brown paper bag like it was made of glass. Didn't think I'd show up, huh? June blinked. You found me. Shop was locked. Waited 10 minutes until someone told me you were on base. He handed her the bag. Found this in my junk drawer. Pretty sure it's from your dad's kit. Never could fix a shortwave right without it. June peeked inside. A small brass tuning dial, worn and familiar. Thank you, she said. Luther shifted. Maybe I was wrong. About letting ghosts lie. You weren't, June said. He just needed someone to speak for him. A low hum began behind them, the engraving machine starting up. Technicians wheeled over the brass plate, polished and gleaming. June stepped back. The sound was steady, a soft rasp. The air filled with the scent of fresh brass and shaved stone. Letter by letter, the name appeared, Captain. Simon J. Whitaker. June stepped forward and gently placed the daisy beneath it. The petals fluttered in the breeze. The records officer saluted. Luther removed his cap. Harriman stood still, silent. He didn't have to say a word. As they walked back through the clearing, Harriman spoke at last. Your father saved lives in silence, he said. You just gave him his voice. June didn't answer, but her hand brushed the old radio dial in her pocket. And beneath the fading sun, the Ghost Recon patch on her sleeve no longer felt invisible. Something had changed, and now on stone in memory and in the lives he'd touched, her father's name finally belonged. Belle's brow furrowed. This gate is for invited families and credentialed personnel. There's a public viewing area to the east lawn. I'm not here for the ceremony, she said, just to leave a flower at the wall. He glanced at her jacket, then quickly back to her face. Is the name you're honoring listed? No, she said. He never made it that far. Belle straightened. I'm sorry, but we can't allow walk-ins beyond this point. Behind him, two other guards lounged by a portable heater. One nudged the other, nodding at June. "Another ghost hunter," he muttered. "Everyone wants to be a legacy hero these days," the other replied. June didn't react. Her gaze remained fixed past the gate toward a distant line of flags barely visible through the crowd. "I've come here every year," she said softly. "I don't make noise. I leave my flower, that's all." Belle's tone softened, but only slightly. "Ma'am, I understand. But today we're at full capacity. It's not personal." Of course it wasn't. She stepped back without protest and turned away, her boots crunching over wet gravel. She found a weathered bench beneath a flagpole on the edge of the main lot, where a few other visitors sat sipping coffee from paper cups. The white daisy rested in her lap. Her fingers curled around the stem. The band across the field stumbled into a Sousa march, catching themselves on the chorus. The wind picked up, fluttering the flags above her. One shadow fell square across her shoulder, as if trying to remind her she was still here. A voice behind her spoke, not loud, but firm. "Whitaker," it said. She turned. An older man stood a few feet away, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. His cap read 95th Engineers, Bosnia, and his coat was adorned with a patchwork of faded insignia and sharp, deliberate stares. "You said Whitaker, right?" he asked. June nodded. "Yes. Simon Whitaker." She blinked. "James. But..." "Yes. Ghost Recon." He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "He patched my busted radio in Bosnia. Midwinter '98. Snow halfway to hell, and he got that thing chirping like it was brand new." He eased himself down onto the bench beside her. "That was no ordinary soldier," he said. June didn't reply. The wind answered for her. They sat in silence, both facing the base entrance. Beyond the barricade, the day moved on, families embracing children, waving flags, names being read in rehearsed solemnity. But here, on the edge of it all, something else settled. "Recognition. Name's Paul Hadley," the man said finally. "And you don't look like someone trying to steal a moment." "I'm not," she replied. "I just miss my dad." He nodded once, cane tapping against his boot. "That patch," he said, gesturing to her sleeve. "You wear it like armor." She looked down. "It's the only part that still fits." They sat a while longer. A volunteer in a red windbreaker passed by, handing out mini flags. A man offered a folded dollar. "Tip culture alive and well." "Listen," Paul said, shifting to stand. "If Belle's got no memory, maybe someone else does." June looked up. "What do you mean, I mean?" he said, pushing to his feet. "Sometimes you need an old ghost to walk you in." He tapped his cane once, then turned back toward the gate. June remained on the bench, her fingers brushing the daisy's petals. The patch on her sleeve fluttered faintly as the breeze picked up again. And for the first time all morning, she felt just a little less alone. The sun rose slowly over Fort Liberty. Its light crept across the Memorial Plaza, brushing over rows of names, etched in stone names, whispered, remembered, and in some cases rediscovered. And there it was now. Captain Simon J. Whitaker. Still fresh in the brass, the name caught the light just so. June stood in front of it, hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup, steam curling into the chill. The plaza was nearly empty, just a few older veterans chatting over donuts under a pop-up tent, folding chairs still damp with dew. She sat down on a bench facing the wall. Tucked beneath her arm was an envelope, Paul Hadley's handwriting on the front. She opened it slowly. "June." Your father saved me twice, once in a firefight, once with a radio. I never got to repay him, but I figured helping people remember him might come close. You were right to come, and he'd be proud you didn't stop at the gate." Paul June folded the letter back and let the silence settle. A pair of boots crunched behind her. She turned to find Lieutenant Bell not in uniform but holding 2 coffees. He offered one out. "This is for yesterday," he said. "I was wrong." June took the cup. "Thank you." Bell nodded toward the wall. "Never thought I'd salute a name I once blocked." "Neither did I," she said softly. They stood a moment longer, the quiet broken only by the distant tuning of a marching band somewhere beyond the buildings. Then a voice piped up from across the plaza. "Kids, gather round." A teacher in a red scarf led a group of teens toward the wall, notebooks in hand. "This," she said, "is Ms. Whitaker. Her father served in places even maps couldn't reach." The students looked curious. One raised a hand. "What did he do?" June looked down at the patch she still wore. "Not all heroes wore medals," she said, "but some left patches." The teacher stepped aside. June moved to the wall. From her coat pocket she pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, folded, faded, and full of meaning, was the original Ghost Recon patch. She opened a compartment on the wall marked for family tributes and gently placed the box inside. It clicked shut with a soft seal. She stepped back. From behind her, she heard a whisper. "Excuse me, miss, are you the lady from the photo?" It was a teenage girl, maybe 15, holding her phone. "My brother posted about you last night. He said your dad was a legend." June smiled. "He was just a man who showed up. Quietly." The girl hesitated. "Will you be here next year?" June looked back at the brass name, the morning light, the steam rising from her cup. "I've always been here," she said. "You just didn't see me." That afternoon, the plaza filled again with noise, color, and sound. But for a while longer, in the first hours of day, June, Whitaker stood with ghosts and sunlight, carrying something both old and finally fully seen. There was no parade, no headline, just the quiet click of a salute that rewrote everything. Sometimes it takes a single, unassuming gesture to reveal the weight of a lifetime. Judgment may come easy, especially when appearances fool us, but dignity often wears no uniform. Like a porch light glowing through the night, one kind act can guide us home when the world feels unkind. If this story stirred something in you, maybe today's the day to look again at the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, and pass a little light forward.